Texas Governor Rick Perry obviously is not here tonight. He's giving a speech on Saturday in South Carolina. We're told he's getting into this race, but he's not answering questions tonight. He's not taking part in the straw poll on Saturday. So is he outsmarting you? 30 seconds, Congressman Paul.
Well, maybe he didn't want to face up to the challenge, for all we know.
About this strategy?
Oh no, I'm very pleased that he's coming in because he represents the status quo, and I feel like I'm sort of separated from the other candidates with my strong belief in liberty and limited government and a different foreign policy and want to deal with the Fed, so he'll just dilute all their votes. Well, of course, these views are probably the most challenging to him. I mean, because the progressives are disgusted with him. You know, he was supposed to be a peace candidate and bring troops on. Remember, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. I guess you get the Nobel Peace Prize for starting more wars than anybody else. I mean, if you're a true progressive.
Governor Romney.
Congressman Paul, what they're doing is cutting $1 trillion out of the defense budget. They're cutting $1 trillion out of the defense budget, which just happens to equal the $1 trillion they're putting into Obamacare.
Hold on one second, because Ron Paul wants to respond to that point.
Well, they're not cutting anything out of anything. All this talk is just talk. Believe me.
A lot of costs right now. I assume if the Obama administration comes and asks for an emergency funding bill for FEMA, you're a definite, excuse me, you're a definite no.
Well, where would the money come from? We don't have any money. What are you going to do? Go hat in hand to China and borrow the money? But I would consider what I just said, because I have...
You talked about going back to 1900, but way before something like FEMA was around. But in Galveston, which I think is part of your district, it was FEMA who rebuilt. They needed FEMA there wasn't a seawall in Galveston before the storm, and it wasn't. And they needed to rebuild because locals there decided that it was just too expensive for them to cover all of that on their own using local funds, and because they didn't, 6,000 people died in that storm. I mean, if FEMA were abolished, wouldn't you be setting a stage for life or death decisions?
Anderson, wait a minute. The seawall was built shortly thereafter. FEMA didn't build the seawall in 1979. That's been around for a long, long time. You didn't need film.
Congresswoman Bachmann, I want to switch to another angle of the war on terror, though if you want to weigh in on Iran, feel free. You say that we don't win the war on terror by closing Guantanamo and reading Miranda rights to terrorists. Congressman Paul says terrorism suspects have committed a crime and should be given due process in civilian courts. Could you please tell Congressman Paul why he's wrong?
Well, because simply terrorists who commit acts against United States citizens, people who are from foreign countries who do that, do not have any right under our Constitution to Miranda rights. We've also seen that Guantanamo Bay has yielded significant information. In fact, we've learned that that led to the capture and the killing of bin Laden. This is a tool that we need to have in order to be able to prosecute the new type of war, the new type of warfare, and the new type of terrorists that this country is dealing with. Regarding Iran, Iran is the central issue in the Middle East and their capacity to become a nuclear power. They are one of the 4 state sponsors of terror in the world. I sit on the House Select Committee on Intelligence. I can't reveal classified information, but I can say this. As President of the United States, I will do everything to make sure that Iran does not become a nuclear power.
30 seconds, Congressman Paul.
Well, I think she turns our rule of law on its head.
She says that the terrorists don't deserve protection under our courts, but therefore a judgment has to be made. They're ruled a terrorist. Who rules them a terrorist? I thought our courts recognized that you had to be tried, and we've done this. And we've brought individuals back from Pakistan and other places. We've given them a trial in this country, over 300, or at least near 300. We've tried and put them in prison. So this idea that we have to turn on its head and reject the rule of law, we already are at the point where this administration, please let me finish. I have to say, this administration already has accepted the principle that when you assume somebody is a terrorist, they can be targeted for assassination, even American citizens. That affects all of us eventually. You don't want to translate our rule of law into a rule of mob rule.
Senator Sanders.
You only get to pick one. It's about choices.
I have to pick one. Well, let me look them over. I would have to do a bit more quizzing. I would have to check. Fair. They haven't even told me how they feel about the Federal Reserve yet. They haven't told me about
We're down to our last minute.
Anyone that suggests that Iran is not a threat to this country or is not a threat to stability in the Middle East is obviously not seeing the world very clearly. He sees it exactly the way that Barack Obama sees it, that we have to go around and apologize for the fact that we've gone out and exerted our influence to create freedom around the world. I don't apologize for that. I don't apologize for the Iranian people being free for a long time, and now they're under a malocracy that tramples the rights of women, tramples the rights of gays, tramples the rights of people all throughout their society, and is the greatest supporter of terrorism in the Middle East and around the world, and is setting up training camps and is working with Venezuela and other countries in south of our border to threaten us. Iran is a country that must be confronted. I was in front of this curve. I authored the Iran Freedom Support Act back in 2004. It was blocked by Joe Biden, nonetheless, and Barack Obama once. We got it passed, and I can tell you, if Rick Santorum and when Rick Santorum is president, Iran will not get a nuclear weapon, because the world as we know it will be no more.
Congressman Paul, 30 seconds.
You've heard the war propaganda that is liable to lead us into the sixth war, and I worry about that position. Iran is a threat because they have some militants there. But believe me, they're all around the world, and they're all around the world, and they're not a whole lot different than others. Iran does not have an air force that can come here. They can't even make enough gasoline for themselves. And here we are, building this case up, please. They're building up this case just like we did in Iraq. Build up the war propaganda. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and they had nuclear weapons, and we had to go in. I'm sure you supported that war as well. Okay. It's time we quit this. It's time. It's trillions of dollars we're spending on these wars.
When we come back, we'll try to get a hold of things.
What's the protection?
Do you think gold is money?
No.
6,000 years, somebody reversed that and eliminated that economic law. Well,
Congressman, on the issue of immigration, this is what you said in one of the debates.
I think this fence business is designed and may well be used against us and keep us in. In economic turmoil, the people want to leave with their capital, and there's capital controls and there's people control. So every time you think of a fence keeping all those bad people out, think about those fences maybe being used against us, keeping us in.
Is the United States a prison?
Well, I think, there was a Iron Curtain once. I think of what we're developing here as a financial Iron Curtain in a way where you can't travel back and forth.
My point is that a fence never stopped a capital money wire transfer.
No, it never stops illegal immigrants either.
No, you're saying no compromise. So wasn't.
I think my main point. Do you think I should compromise on the First Amendment? On property rights, on your property rights? Should I sell your house because a businessman wants it and he can pay more taxes? Why don't you want somebody to stand on principle? Why?
So